Immediately after finishing Xenoblade Chronicles for the Wii, executive director Tetsuya Takahashi went straight into his next project. Takahashi was adamant about gathering negative feedback from the first title in order to create something superior. The problem was that negative feedback was hard to come by. Everyone loved Xenoblade Chronicles. This didn't stop Takahashi, and he went to work gathering what criticism he could find and wound up with two main complaints. One was that fans of his previous work, Xenogears and Xenosaga, noted that you don't get to pilot mechs in Xenoblade. This had become a staple of his work, and some found it disappointing it didn't make it into the title. The second was that modern-day graphics needed to be striking and sharp and less artistic. I want it to be known that I disagree with both these points, but we'll get back to the script. In December of 2010, Takahashi presented a proposal to Hitoshi Yamagami of Nintendo's production group and pitched his high-definition science fiction RPG. This would be a spiritual successor to Xenoblade instead of a direct sequel, allowing him to play around with some new, disconnected ideas. His pitch was to lean heavier into the sci-fi themes found in Xenoblade and move away from the more mystical ones. Takahashi wanted to embrace hard sci-fi with an emphasis on environmental exploration over narrative urgency. Yamagami approved the pitch, which initiated a 6-month pre-production period followed by full development starting in June of 2011. The initial idea for the game was vast, covering multiple alien planets, but the team quickly realized that distributing their content across different worlds would dilute the depth and density of the exploration experience. So they decided on a single planet with multiple biomes instead. Early on, there were 18 distinct continents on the planet of Mira, but very quickly that number was shaved down to just 5. Primordia, a vast plain similar to the original's Bionis, Noctilum, a dense forested area, Oblivia, a desert wasteland, Sylvalum, a crystallized hollow plateau, and finally Caldros, a deadly burning volcanic canyon. Although they were developing the game for the Wii U, which had much more computing power over the Wii, Takahashi's team quickly found its limitations. One of the problems they were running up against was creating a seamless world without load screens. Takahashi pored over this issue and eventually came up with the Frontier Nav, a honeycombed map with each loadable area separated by a hexagonal grid. This allowed Monolith Soft to load up each section and its neighboring section without sacrificing the player's immersion. It became obvious to the team that exploring such a vast world alone felt isolated. You were able to recruit party members to take along with you, but Takahashi wanted to incorporate online features as well. Xenoblade was inspired by Western MMORPGs after all. This threw development into utter chaos, as the team had to restructure the plan to include this online component. Another mid-development change was the protagonist. Originally, Xenoblade X was going to have a set playable character which they referred to as the Black Knight. With the introduction of online features, this idea was scrapped for a player-designed avatar, leaving story and narrative progression to side characters like Elma and Lyn. One of the most unusual decisions made to the title, though, was bringing on anime composer Hiroyuki Sawano, who had composed for shows like Attack on Titan, Kill la Kill, and Mobile Suit Gundam Unicorn. This, on paper, seemed like a solid choice, as Sawano's career proved he was quite talented. Takahashi gave Sawano complete and utter creative control over the music, and Sawano went to work producing 90 tracks for the game. This was Sawano's first foray into video game composition, and unfortunately, his lack of experience shone through. The first public appearance of project codenamed Space Travel was E3 2013, where one of the single most exciting trailers for the Wii U was released. If you were a fan of Xenoblade, this trailer might have ruptured your brain. The graphics, world, and most importantly, the introduction of mechs was almost too much to handle. Takahashi listened to that sparse feedback and made the use of mechs, or dolls in Japan and skells everywhere else, a main focus of the trailer and the game itself. The Western release of Xenoblade Chronicles X was localized by Nintendo Treehouse in partnership with 8-4. This was a massive task, as the game included thousands of volumes of text from bestiaries, item descriptions, affinity missions, and much more, not to mention the immense amount of dialogue found in the game. This is where the controversies began. Nintendo Treehouse took liberties with translation, changing lines of dialogue completely from their previous meaning and context. The biggest controversy, though, was in its censorship. You see, there was a problem with the game. Takahashi had chosen to make one of the main characters, Lin Ku, a 13-year-old girl. Alone, this isn't a problem, but seeing as every party member in the game's appearance changed with the armor they equipped, the fact that Lin was an underage girl became a major issue in the West. It was decided by Nintendo that Lin's outfit would be censored, adding in sports bras and bodysuits in places where she showed too much skin. The censorship didn't stop there though, as a feature of the female avatar was removed as well. When creating your avatar, you can change their height, hairstyle, and skin color, eye shape, and so on. If you chose a female avatar, you could also adjust their bust size. This entire feature was removed from the Western release, and in its place, the female avatar was given a default medium bust size. This change sparked outrage among a subset of the Xenoblade community. Many felt Nintendo was sanitizing the game, compromising the developer's original artistic vision. The backlash became so bad that Takahashi himself came out and said that he did not think the changes would affect his vision of the game. After 5 years of rocky development, Xenoblade Chronicles X launched in Japan on April 29, 2015, and later was released in North America and Europe on December 4, 2015. Many years after the release, fans prayed for a port to the Switch as the Wii U was a failed platform. In May of 2025, the Xenoblade community finally got their wish. A remaster of the game was released, which fixed many of the UI issues, added new party members, quests, and one more chapter that wrapped up the story. But before we get into that, let's dive into the original release first and decide something for ourselves. Did Takahashi produce a better sequel, built upon the first title, or did he create a black sheep of the series, entirely different from what we experienced before? Once again, the story of Xenoblade begins with two galactic forces at war. In the stars above Earth, a battle wages. Humans try to defend their planet from destruction, but fail. As Earth burns, large ships called arcs escape its atmosphere only to be caught in the crossfire. Most of these vessels don't even make it past the moon, but a single ship, the White Whale, manages to escape, and for 2 years, it searches the expanse of space for a new home. Unfortunately, the alien invaders weren't done with us. They attacked the White Whale, its inhabitants rallying to defend what's left of the human race. During the battle, a single hero appears and defends the colony long enough for them to escape, but the damage was too severe and the White Whale crashes down on an alien planet. This is the planet of Mira, and the final stand of the human race. After the opening, we are able to create our avatar. Back in 2015, this was a pretty in-depth creator, all things considered. Looking at it now, I realize that it's actually pretty sparse. You can decide between a male or female body type, then you choose a general template whose height, hairstyle, skin color, and eye color can be adjusted. That's about it. I played around with the female design for a bit since all of the main characters of Xenoblade games are male, but no matter what I did, I looked like I was 15 years old, so I changed over to a male template, which looked way cooler anyway. I am not a fan of censorship for the most part. I do agree that there are certain issues across different cultures that make censorship necessary. But for the most part, I think that art should always be left in its intended state. I don't think removing the bust slider was necessary, though I think I understand why. After finalizing our character, the story begins.
Attention, external access confirmed. Disengaging stasis in 10 seconds. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Releasing hatch. Please stand clear.
Hey there. Looks like you're all in one piece.
A door to our escape pod opens, revealing a young woman with white hair. During the attack on the White Well, escape pods were launched from the ship before it crashed down the planet. Elma asks us questions about ourselves, but I have no memories at all, which she says could be caused by the cryostasis I was in for the past 2 months. We make our way to the crest of a hill and finally get a look at the planet we will learn to call home. Elma says we need to get to New LA, and we are able to jump into gameplay. I appreciate this first area and its tutorial. This is the only time I feel the game does a good job at teaching you its mechanics. X's battle system was a complete improvement on the originals in almost every single way. In X, you have 2 weapons you can switch between, long range and melee. Each comes with arts and abilities. I started out in the basic class, the Drifter, which has a knife and an assault rifle. I'll get into the battle mechanics and classes later in this analysis, but just know that the large piece of land you can explore before heading to New LA is an amazing sandbox for a player to learn the basic mechanics. Before heading into the city, I fought enough battles to change my class. I had 3 choices: Striker, Commando, and Enforcer. I chose Striker, which let me upgrade my knife to a longsword but retain my assault rifle. Also, I'm realizing that my guy, which is canonically called Cross, looks permanently pissed off. Elma and Cross take the elevator into the city, and I get my first look at New LA. There are a few things I noticed at this point. First, Elma's personality is a little, dry.
Watch yourself. That first step's a doozy.
Second was this tower in the middle of the city with a percentage on it. The Director General of the White Well announces over the city's comm system that 10 survivors were rescued. Apparently, these past 2 months have been occupied by everyone establishing a home, rescuing those who escaped in pods, and surveying the alien planet. We head into the main building and meet Irina and Gwyn. Irina is a team captain, like Elma, and Gwyn is one of her subordinates. Inside, the Director General states that he lied about the survivors and that I am the only one discovered. It shows the situation they're in. There is an air of desperation among the survivors. Originally, X was supposed to have a storied main character, similar to Shulk, but the idea was scrapped mid-development for a custom avatar. This means that Cross is a silent hero, which is a difficult mechanism in a story-heavy title like this. The idea behind silent heroes is that the player can more easily put themselves in the story, but because of said silence, a narrative parrot, for lack of a better term, needs to be provided. Someone who can speak for the hero in order to develop and advance the story. I rarely enjoy silent heroes. It often makes the narrative less involved, not more. Most of the time, silent heroes are passive and lack any sort of development, as establishing weaknesses or flaws to overcome is difficult. Cross is no exception. I had hoped that the amnesia I was experiencing was going to come back as an important plot point, but as you'll see, your avatar is mainly just here for the ride. We have now finished the prologue and move into Chapter 1. A mech called a Skell crashes as Elma and I are exploring the city. A car races past with a little girl inside. These two are Doug and Lynn. Doug was testing out a new feature on the mech that Lynn, a genius mechanic, built. Apparently she's not too smart, as her test nearly killed him. Lynn is a major problem in more ways than one. Like I said in the opening, Takahashi decided for whatever reason to have this main character be a 13-year-old girl. I already mentioned the issue around the different outfits in the game. Lynn need be specially censored in the West in order to avoid any understandable issues with underage sexualization. But that's not the only issue Lynn presents. Lynn and another character introduced later on hurt the mature, high-definition sci-fi aesthetic Takahashi was going for. Up to this point, everything seemed in place, but not once does this 13-year-old genius fit in. And every scene where she's present becomes a distraction that makes it hard to get invested in the world. I'll show some examples later on, but for now, we head to the barracks and start my long, very long tour of New LA and the organization Elma, Lynn, Doug, Irina, and Gwyn belong to, Blade. New LA is made up of 4 districts: the Industrial District, Commercial District, Residential District, and finally the Administrative District. This is where we'll spend most of our time. We are introduced to Nagi, the former captain of the White Well, now a commander for Blade. Blade is an organization built to cover all the needs of the city. Nagi suggests I join, but Elma asks that I wait a little longer until my memory returns. After all, we still have a few more hours of tutorials to get through. Once again, I need to point out how dry all the characters are. At this point in the first title, we had met Shulk, Rain, Dunban, Fiora, and Dixon. All of them made for interesting characters with identifiable personality traits. Here though, we have Nagi, who is stiff and flat, Elma, also stiff and flat, Irina, Gwyn, and Doug, who all seem plain, and Lynn. I really wish this character had been scrapped altogether, or at least wasn't a teenage girl. It would have made everything just a little better. We gather all together and the plot of the game is finally revealed by Elma.
Take a look at this. The White Whale was designed to carry an exceedingly large number of passengers, all of them held in stasis, all housed in a structure called the Lifehold. This is a complete schematic of that facility. Only essential personnel were conscious and active for the journey from Earth. The flight crew, maintenance engineers, and of course, some military so we could defend ourselves if necessary. But the vast majority were in the Lifehold. Are in the Lifehold. With any luck, they're all still there, in stasis, waiting to be rescued. But there's a problem. We now know the Lifehold broke apart along with the rest of the ship when we came down on Mira. What we don't know is exactly where all the pieces landed. Not very comforting, I know.
Elma explains that after they escaped the destruction of Earth and crash-landed on Mira, the Lifehold, which houses hundreds of thousands of refugees in cryosleep, was lost from the White Whale and broken into multiple pieces. Blade is now searching for those missing units. We also find out that Elma was somehow key to humans escaping from Earth, but we don't learn anything else. Elma and Lynn take me to the administrative district, and Lynn treats the Skell like it was a sexy lady.
Oh yeah, work it, baby.
Elma says that Skells were developed specifically to fight the alien invaders. I'll spare you the long, very long explanation of the districts.
Honey, we're home.
We head back to the barracks where Commander Vandam says he wants to fast-track me to Blade. I am asked if I will join, and I say yes. I wonder what would have happened if I said no. We are then given our first training assignment, which is to place a probe at a specified location. As we begin Chapter 2, a major issue in this title begins to become apparent. The sound design is all over the place. This cutscene is silent. There isn't even ambience playing in the background.
I'll try not to take that personally.
Throw in animal sounds, the wind, something. Speaking of sound design, let's talk about the music. Being Hiroyuki Sawano's first time creating video game music, his ideas were, let's say, unconventional. First of all, there are a ton of tracks that have lyrics. The track that plays in New LA is a rap. Battle has an epic piece with a duet in it. Either way, Sawano was given complete freedom with the music, and he went all over the place, creating some of the best songs in the series. And some of the worst. Normally, video game music is designed around the title it's representing and is mainly used as an emotional lead, signaling to the player what they should be feeling in each moment. But Sawano just made a bunch of cool music and the devs found ways to fit it in, which is why you get moments like this.
A jerk is still a jerk, even if it's your job to save him.
Harsh, but fair.
I still can't believe how quick you jumped in to help.
Well, we're the only humans on this rock, you know?
Our mission leads us to a Tyrant. These are unique enemies similar to the original Xenoblade, and they make up the most difficult battles in the game. We take out the Tyrant, then head back to the barracks where I learn more about the segments on the frontier map. Each one of these hexagons has a task associated with them, and in order to 100% the map, you need to complete each one. And yes, after 133 hours, I did just that. I'm also asked to pick a division of Blade to join. This mechanic was originally built to make the player feel like they were part of a larger purpose. You see, there are 8 divisions, each corresponding with a specific type of mechanic or task a player will complete. There are the Pathfinders, which plant probes, the Interceptors, which fight common monsters, the Harriers, which take out tyrants, the Reclaimers, which find pieces of the White Well and are the foremost group looking for the Lifehold, the Curators, which explore new areas and find rare material, the Prospectors, which prospect for resources and minerals, the Outfitters, which support development of new weaponry, and finally the Mediators, which solve civilian issues. In the original title on the Wii U, picking a division and then completing those division-specific tasks gave you division points, which were used to raise your blade rank and give you certain abilities. You also provide buffs to online players in your same division. In online mode, the only right choice was the Curators, as they gained division points simply by picking up collectibles all over the world. It says a lot about how pointless and stupid this mechanic is that it was completely stripped from the definitive edition. Now, all a division did for you was give you a slight buff and let you pretend like you were part of the story. I chose the Harriers because taking out tyrants is about the only thing that is going to be challenging in this game, and moved on. With that, we start into Chapter 3. I also learned about mission types. The story structure of Xenoblade Chronicles X is probably the largest barrier to truly appreciating this title. Unlike traditional RPGs that have a main plotline where, if you follow it, you'll get most of the storyline, if you do only the main quests of X, you won't only be confused about the main plot, but you will experience not even half the narrative available. I'm assuming Takahashi built the title this way because he wanted to emulate MMORPGs, but many story beats and world lore are hidden away in side missions. Specifically, affinity missions, which are missions that revolve around one of your party members, normal missions, which are missions gained by speaking with residents of New LA, and finally, basic missions, which can be accepted at the mission board. If you want to experience everything Xenoblade X has to offer, be ready to complete every single affinity and normal mission in the game. This poses its own problem though, because if you care about completing all available side missions in between chapters, you will be so overpowered that the main plotline becomes a joke. There are a ton of threads out there explaining that if you want to enjoy the story, ignore the side quests, then do them after. But how are you supposed to enjoy the story if most of it is locked away in said side quests? Ultimately, this unique structure does not work. Speaking of side quests, because of this structure, they do end up being more involved on a narrative level than the side quests of Xenoblade and its epilogue. You are still taking care of the same menial tasks, such as defeating enemies, gathering material, and exploring new areas. But unlike the original title, sometimes you will be rewarded with lore drops or side stories that tie into the main narrative. The affinity quests are especially important as they flesh out the cast. They may seem like side quests, but aside from a handful of specific party members like Elma and Lynn, the main story quests don't involve the other party members at all. One last note about the side quests is that they are broken. Here, let me show you a specific one to help you understand. You see, there's this quest where a Blade member needs to fix her helicopter. You are tasked with finding the parts she needs. The UI provides this nice little checklist, and wouldn't you know it, I've already found the parts. Better go back and give them to her. I was so confused. She said I needed the spherical EM motor, but the quest checklist said I had the spherical EM motor. This took me a while to figure out, but I finally put the puzzle pieces together. So at one point, I did acquire a spherical EM motor, but then I used it in a different side mission I had accepted at the same time. I completed the task for both missions, but only had one in my inventory, which meant even though it says I completed the task, I had to go get another one. There are dozens of examples of broken quest lines, from an NPC not being where they're supposed to be because they're involved in an entirely different side quest, to quest markers leading you to effing nowhere. This wasn't even corrected in the definitive edition, it's just a quirk of the game, I guess. Last thing before we go on with the story, I mentioned how well X introduced the world and combat. My walk from the crash site to New LA taught me the basics of battle, class management, and much more. I felt like I was caught up by the time I reached New LA. This is the only time the game's progression feels like this. From now on, tutorials are dropped on you with random cheap-looking text boxes, and the complex mechanics are pretty much left up to you to figure out. I'll expand on this last point later. I had the option to do a bunch of side quests, but decided to go on with the story missions until I unlocked a fourth party member. Elma's team is sent out to find a missing group of Pathfinders. While searching, we find an unfamiliar structure, but can't find the blades. Some ugly aliens who look like the Halo grunts had grown up, find our group and tell us they've captured the Pathfinders we seek. Apparently these Xenos, which is a word used in the game for all alien life forms, have been ordered to kill humans on sight. We beat them, but our group is confused why they would attack us. We press into the alien structure until we come upon the bodies of the Pathfinders. All of them have been killed, execution style. Another group of the Xenos show up and Elma demands they tell her why they killed innocent people. These grunts are the prone, and they are, in every sense of the word, evil. Like monocled, maniacal laugh evil, not like well-written evil. We jump into a boss fight, and it's here where I start to become acutely aware of Xenoblade X's difficulty imbalance. I obliterated this boss fight, but the game started giving me tutorials on battle abilities I had figured out hours ago. In fact, there wasn't a single story-based boss fight that gave me trouble my entire playthrough. Little did I know that the imbalanced nature of combat and difficulty was just getting started. We take care of the prone, but as we're leaving, we hear a voice calling out from a container. We investigate and are introduced to the single most annoying character in the Xenoblade universe. Tatsu is a Nopon, which was captured by the prone. He tells us about the brute Xenos, stating that they aren't native to Mira, just like the humans. The use of Nopon here makes sense, but damn if Tatsu isn't the strangest choice in this game. The Nopon do not fit in with the sci-fi aesthetic. And just like the choice to include a 13-year-old girl, there isn't a single story significance to Tatsu at all. As another Xeno, one native to Mira, it makes sense that the Nopon are here, but Tatsu himself is a stark reminder to the player that, hey, you're playing a Japanese video game. The fact that Tatsu and Lin are paired together and are main characters in this story only makes things worse. The two hit it off, Lin becoming incredibly annoyed with Tatsu with little to no provocation. It's as if the writers are eager to set up a reoccurring joke we will see dozens of times throughout our playthrough. Our group makes some terrible jokes, which I'm realizing is going to be a staple of the writing, and Tatsu gives us the follow ball. This ball can be activated whenever you are looking for a quest marker and works about 50% of the time. Look at that, another broken mechanic. As I enter New LA, I notice that tower once more with the percentage on it. We return to Vandam. Oh, by the way, this muscular cartoon character is Commander Vandam. He's the direct superior of Elma. Anyway, Elma gives Vandam a breakdown of the prone, the death of the Pathfinder team, and rescuing Tatsu. She says that their search for the Lifehold is even more important as there are hostile Xenos out to destroy them. Tatsu asks if he can stay in New LA, and Commander Vandam agrees. At this point, the initial hand-holding tutorial is finally over, and I receive Irina, Gwyn, and Doug as party members. Let's pause for a moment and go over the available characters for battle so far. Elma uses dual swords and guns and is a straight-up DPS, which means damage per second. She is the single best party member in Xenoblade Chronicles X and has the strongest defensive art in the game, Ghost Factory, which allows all her allies to evade a number of attacks. Lin is a tank using a shield and a Gatling gun for ranged attacks. She's the third best tank in the game, with arts that make her invulnerable for a time while using her Gatling gun to add to the damage. Gwyn is more or less a DPS with a longsword and assault rifle like Cross. He's not amazing, but the longsword is good for damage. Doug uses photon sabers and a ray gun and is another tank, though he's not nearly as useful as Lin. Irina is one of the best party members in the game as well, being only surpassed by a few others. Irina uses a knife and assault rifle and is the best healer and debuffer available for the early and mid game. Every party member is built from the class system available to Cross. They also have a set art palette and passive skills they can equip. You are able to play as any of the party members, and at first, this may seem like the right choice as characters like Elma and Irina are extremely deadly when used manually. But a player will quickly realize that Cross, with his access to every art and skill in the game, and after a bit of grinding, is absolutely busted. And I don't mean run-of-the-mill busted. I mean probably the single strongest protagonist in RPG history. The class system here is actually fascinating, though it is not explained properly, so players will be confused without doing their homework. Cross can master every single branch of the class tree, but once mastered, the associated weapon can be equipped even if you assign a different class. There are a large variety of weapons in the game. I'll explain each one in the order of usefulness. The spear and multi-gun, which is a hidden weapon type, are the worst choices as they provide almost zero utility, especially in the late and post-game. The Gatling gun, dual swords, photon saber, and ray gun are all decent weapons for a playthrough. They can dish out decent damage, but are less useful, not because of what they can't do, but because of what better weapons can. The rifle, dagger, shield, and psycho launchers all have incredible utility. The rifle and shield are great for a topple lock strategy that isn't nearly as broken in X as it was in the original Xenoblade Chronicles, but still is viable. The shield also has some invincibility arts that make it perfect for defense. The dagger has the best support arts in the game, while the psycho launchers are all around useful. The three best weapons in the game are the sniper rifle, which has the best arts for buffing your attack and is used to hit the damage cap. The dual guns, which are here strictly for Ghostwalker, which is the strongest defensive art in the game and is used in the single best build. And finally, the longsword, which has the highest damaging arts in the game. In the original game, the strongest attack was called Blossom Dance, but in the definitive edition, an art called Hercules Blow was added, and it is insane. I created a team of Elma as a secondary DPS, Lyn as my tank, and Irina as my healer, then accept my first affinity mission. This affinity mission is with a character named HB. HB is our first recruitable party member who uses a shield and assault rifle and is the second best tank in Xenoblade Chronicles X. As I run across the party members, I'll give a summary of their individual stories and my thoughts on them. I did not like HB when I first met him, and I think that was by design. HB has aspirations to become the commander of Blade one day, taking over for Vandom. Because of this, he sees anyone and everyone as a stepping stone for his progression. He treats lives as expendable for the good of the mission, and almost lacks the ability to feel empathy. Later on in the story, HB fumbles a mission and ends up learning what it takes to be a true leader. HB falls in the middle as far as interesting party members go. His progression isn't terrible, and the rivalry he develops with Cross makes their relationship feel a lot less one-sided than most. HB's use of shields and assault rifles are a solid combo of tanking and debuffing. An important lesson I learned while doing this mission is that you can't progress the main story if you've accepted an affinity mission. And if you accept an affinity mission, you can't unaccept it. Affinity missions, once accepted, have to be completed, which means that I'm locked to HB's storyline until it's done. Luckily, it's a low-level mission, but this is a major flaw in the game, as a new player could easily accept a higher-level mission and have to complete it just to continue progressing the story. Imagine having to level up enough to fight a side boss in order to go back and do the lower-level story missions. Once again, the structure and balance of Xenoblade X is wildly off balance. After completing the affinity mission and swapping Lyn for HB, I decided to explore more of Primordia. Primordia is the first continent we are able to explore, though most of the map at this point is available to us. These grasslands were the landing place of the White Well and mimic the Bionis' knee from the first title. It even has the claw-like mountain outcroppings. I think this was done on purpose to ease the player into the new world of Mira, which I believe was the right choice. I wrap up all the side missions I can and continue on to Chapter 4. Now that we have Tatsu, we are given choices at the beginning of each story chapter of what the party should eat. This is followed by a cooking Tatsu joke.
Fried chicken. We're out of meat, so we'll need something that tastes like chicken. Or should I say someone who tastes like chicken?
What? Tatsu not taste like chicken. Tatsu tastes like poop. And poison. Tatsu tastes like poison poop.
Every single story chapter of this serious sci-fi RPG begins with a 13-year-old girl making jokes about how she wants to eat this dumb-looking turnip alien. I honestly don't know what to say. When Takahashi took in the criticism of the first title, at what point did he decide that this...
Tanning oil? That's just plain old honey. It's the crucial step for a perfect chicken sauté. The honey marinade.
Commander Vandom shows up and briefs us on our next mission. Apparently, a piece of the Lifehold was found in the forested continent of Noctilum. He tells us to connect with someone named Lao, and we set off. Lao may seem like just another character, but he's one of the more important party members in the game. When we arrive to meet up with him, Lao asks after Elma's old team, which she explains were killed by indigens. Apparently, there's some history here between the two. We fill Lao in on the prone and the Lifehold piece, and he joins our party. Lao uses spears and sniper rifles, which is a build designed for high single target damage. Unfortunately, the spear is the worst melee weapon type in the game, and I already have myself and Elma as the party's DPS, so I pass on using him and keep my current team set up. We continue forward into Noctilum until I ran across a blue-skinned Xeno named L. His species is another native to Mira, though he's the only one we ever come across. L says that the prone have attacked his people. Apparently, they found a piece of the Lifehold and studied the human history found in its archives. This made Elle a massive fan of the human race and thus learned our culture and language. Elle is another party member and the single best tank in the game. Tanking is relevant only at the beginning, so it makes sense that we receive so many before Chapter 4. Elle's shield and Psycho Launcher combo is built for survivability, so I switch them in, making my team Cross, Elma, Irina, and Elle. Before jumping into the Forest continent, I head back to New LA and develop some gear. As you place probes on the map, you start to mine Moranium. This currency is used for creating and upgrading gear, as well as investing in manufacturers. As you invest in different manufacturers, you unlock different types of gear. It's a cool system, honestly, and it was always exciting to unlock new weapons and armor. For now, I've kept Cross as a DPS using a physical attribute longsword and assault rifle. Shortly though, once I unlock the single most broken passive skill in the game, we'll switch over to an ether-based weapon. But for now, this will do. Something I want to add here is how awesome all the different armor sets are. Similar to the remaster of Xenoblade Chronicles, in X you can have fashion gear, meaning you can decide the look of your party members despite their current equipment, which is a blessing. I love this feature so much, and the different designs fit the sci-fi vibes so well. I am especially a fan of the outfits added in the Definitive Edition. After gearing up, I head out to the Lifehold. Noctilum, the second continent on Mira, is a disaster. Sure, this looks cool, but it is an absolute maze of trees, vines, caves, and narrow canyons. Anytime I had to do a quest here, I used the follow ball and hoped it worked, which sometimes it did not. We reach the Lifehold in time to see the Prone trying to destroy it. We also meet Goetia, a member of the Ganglion. This isn't explained anywhere in the story, but the Ganglion are similar to the Covenant in Halo. They're an alliance of Xenos whose entire purpose, as far as we know, is to hunt down and destroy the human race. Goetia says killing humans is a righteous cause. Once again, we're given tutorials on battle features I've been using for hours and completely wipe Goetia in a boss fight. Just before we take her out, a mech flies down and saves her. Elma recognizes it as one of the mechs that attacked Earth. Goetia destroys the Lifehold before escaping. Having failed our mission, we head back to New LA. Elle asks if he can stay in the city and learn more about the humans, which Elma gets permission for.
Either you picked up another Xeno, or someone's been holding their breath too long.
Gosh, the writing is so bad. What happened here? What was a strength of the first title has been relegated to a toleration in this one. Apparently, the Lifehold piece that was destroyed was a data archive and didn't contain the refugees in cryosleep. Elma laments the loss of so much of Earth's history. Elma's piqued my interest. She's a Blade commander, like Irina and Lao, yet everyone in command seems to treat her differently. It's obvious at this point that she has more history with the attack on Earth than most. A question about the Ganglion is brought up during this conversation.
Could they possibly know the purpose of the Lifehold?
Maybe the whole reason we haven't found the core yet is because those scumbags already trashed it.
If so, none of us would be here talking in the first place, would we?
You got a point there.
Before I can move on to the next story chapter, there are some requirements I need to complete first. One of those is exploring 30% of Oblivia. This is how the main story throttles progression. Each chapter requires you to hit a few milestones in exploration, or complete some required side quests, which is a funny phrase only applied to this title. Oblivia is a desert wasteland and probably the least relevant continent of the 5. Not much happens here and most of the environment is empty. At least traveling on foot is a blast. One of the smartest choices Takahashi's team made was to make on-foot traversal fun. Cross is an ultra athlete. Here, let's compare this to the first title. Cross isn't only faster, but he can leap to high places and there's no fall damage. With such a vast open world, this was the right decision and makes exploring feel like driving a rally car. One of my favorite parts of the game was heading into a new area on foot. On foot. Keep that in mind. Speaking of the open world, unlike Xenoblade Chronicles, where the main protagonist was Shulk and the story revolved around his struggle for revenge, Cross is not the main protagonist of Xenoblade X. Elma, Lynn, and unfortunately Elle, who has quickly become one of my favorite side characters, are not either. Mira, the world, is the main character here. This entire game is built around her 5 continents, and the struggles that go on are almost always environmental in nature. This is the story of Mira, not of Cross. Before moving on to Chapter 5, I decided to do more affinity missions and recruit additional party members. I started with Alexa. Alexa, as far as looks go, may be my favorite female design. I like her skin tone and hairstyle, but as a story character, she's close to the bottom. Not the worst, but pretty damn close. Alexa is a Skell fanatic. That's it. That's her entire story. Her different affinity quests reveal no real struggle aside from she just really loves Skells. As a party member, Alexa is probably the most circumstantial of all the recruitable characters. She has access to spears, which again are the worst melee weapon, and assault rifles, but you wouldn't want to use her for standard combat. Alexa's usefulness is exclusive to the use of Skells, as most of her passive abilities are tied to the mechs. Next, I did Irina's story. Seeing as Irina is one of the main characters, I half expected her affinity missions to be of higher quality, but they are not. The writing around her character is lazy and uninteresting. In fact, the only thing that makes Irina interesting is another party member, which we'll get to later. After wrapping up Irina's mission, I move on to Chapter 5. I'll spare you the eating Tatsu joke and move into the mission. We're tasked with investigating some large ship that the Ganglions attacked in Oblivia. In the original title on the Wii U, some missions required you to use specific party members. This was actually a major issue as almost every story mission required Elma and Lynn, meaning you were locked into using them the majority of the time. In Chapter 5, Gwyn and Irina are required for the mission and thus must be used. Luckily, this feature was fixed in the Definitive Edition as you can bring along any party member of your choosing to any mission, no matter what. Imagine having a roster this size and not letting you use them freely. Once again, an entire gameplay system was completely abandoned in the remaster, showing that it was a flaw to begin with. We get to Oblivia and...
Welcome to Sandy Bum Canyon.
You know what? I think Tatsu might have more dialogue than any other character in this title. Let that sink in. We meet a new species of Xeno called the Manon, who sound like this.
Here to help. Tatsu is not takeout or food.
They say that their ship is hidden in the canyon but can't escape because 3 ganglion turrets are ready to shoot them down. We agree to take out the turrets so they can escape. It's here that Elma makes an interesting observation.
I know that sound. What is it, Elma?
Just Tatsu, the Ganglion, and now these Manon. Don't you find it a little odd that we can understand these alien languages?
Good point.
Funny enough, I was wondering this too when we found El and Tatsu. Both are native to Mira, so this would be the first time they spoke to each other, and yet they speak perfect English. This isn't the only intriguing idea revealed in this chapter. This is off script, but I think this might be my favorite chapter, but I can't quite remember. We take out the turrets and head back to find the Manon being attacked. The Ganglion want the Manon to help them with something. These dudes are just such cartoonish villains. Seriously, the writing borders on lazy how singularly evil all these aliens are. We head into a fight and easily dispatch the Ganglion before being rewarded with possibly the coolest cutscene in the entire game.
Woo-hoo! Dance of victory!
Damn it!
I wish I could say it was Tatsu dying, but it's not. Cross saves Tatsu and loses his arm in the process. Lynn and Elma race forward, Lynn pulling out her device to activate something that cuts off the pain. Wait, am I a robot? Back at New LA, Cross is fixed up. Elma and Lynn are relieved before Lynn says this.
You're lucky Lynn was with us. If she hadn't acted as fast as she did, you might have bled out entirely. We could have lost your whole unit.
Oh, it was nothing.
Before we go any further, I wanted to apologize. I should have realized you might have forgotten about this, but As you probably noticed, the body you're inhabiting is artificial.
The bodies we are inhabiting are not our real bodies. They are called mimeosomes, or MIMS for short. Every single passenger on the White Well is a MIM, our real bodies stored away in the core of the lifehold. If the lifehold is destroyed or runs out of power, everyone will die. All of a sudden, the race to find it makes a lot more sense. This is possibly the coolest plot twist in the entire game. It was actually hidden pretty well. Going back through past conversations, there were small clues hinting at it, which I appreciate. I suppose the writing isn't all bad. Elma explains that we can switch to other MIMS, but the core holds that ability. So we need to make the ones we have last. We also find out what the percentage on the tower is. It's the countdown to the lifehold running out of power and shutting down. In other words, the countdown to the end of humanity. Back with the Manon, we find out that Commander Vandam is letting them stay in New LA. Apparently they were flying past Mira, but the planet scrambled their sensors, causing their ship to crash down and destroying their capability to leave. The Manon explained that the Ganglion are a criminal organization who broke off from a much larger galactic federation called the Samar. This organization will become very important later on, so keep them in mind. The Manon ship lands in New LA and is now a part of the city we can explore. And with all that, the final battle mechanic, the overdrive, is introduced, and we are now officially done with the game's tutorial, at least until we unlock skills. Overdrive is the single most broken mechanic in Xenoblade X and is used to create such an insanely strong build that you can one-shot nearly every enemy in the game. I'll explain how it works later on when I get my final build, but for now, let's do a few more affinity missions. I said that another party member made Irina interesting, and that would be her sister, but not sister, perhaps her ex-girlfriend? Murderess. Yes, her name is Murderess, and I'm not entirely sure what her relationship is with Irina. But upon accepting her affinity mission, we find out that she's a untrustworthy criminal. Who would have known with a name like Murderess? As the game progresses, we learn that Murderess and Irina grew up in the same orphanage. Murderess's parents were some rich tycoons, and Murderess will do anything and everything to get back her family's wealth. Her story actually culminates in her purchasing a mansion, which I politely ask if we should move in together. Murderess's build is interesting as she's similar to Elma, just with psycho launchers instead of dual guns. This makes her less useful than the best DPS units, but she's still viable and became a regular invite to my party. Nail Nail is exclusive to the Definitive Edition, and she is called a Chlorian, another Xeno foreign to Mira. Nail Nail is an archaeologist investigating an ancient technology found in Oblivia. This giant ring is apparently a terraforming device created by the Sumerians. They're an ancient galactic race who started the Federation called Samar before going extinct. Nail Nail is an average party member as far as builds go. She has the same weapon setup as Murderess with awesome skills but terrible arts. Honestly, overall, she's just mid. The next affinity mission was Yelv, and I thought he looked so stupid I decided to put him in my dumbest armor. Alright, that looks pretty cool. Believe it or not, Yelv ended up being my favorite party member as far as story is concerned. Yelv lost a friend of his during the crash of the White Whale. While on a mission, we find the arm of his friend's Mim washed up on shore and realize he's already gone. But Yelv sees it as a sign that he's still out there. Watching Yelv deny his friend's death, only later to grapple with accepting it, was fascinating and honestly made for some solid storytelling. As far as gameplay goes, Yelv uses photon sabers and ray guns and is similar to Doug in almost every way with slightly better arts. I then started Bose's affinity quest. Bose is the worst party member as far as story goes. He's a racist monk who, through his stupid teachings, gets all of his students killed. I honestly just started skipping through his dialogue after a while. Bose is also one of the worst party members to use in battle, being a spear-sniper combo like Lao. Continuing through the affinity quests, I next found Fog. Fog is a young high school football star recruited into the military during the attack on Earth. He's an airhead, but has an interesting relationship with another party member we'll meet later on. Believe it or not, Fog is just behind Elma in overall usefulness. With dual guns and dual swords, he has access to Ghostwalker, which makes him invulnerable for a certain amount of attacks and, similar to Ghost Factory, is one of the best defensive arts in the game. After Fog, I started Hope's affinity quest, and holy crap, I had no idea what I was in for. So Hope is some sort of healer or religious prophetess of some kind. She blindly believes in the goodness of others, which causes issues as her assistant uses her ignorance to profit off of her charity. Hope is also the single worst party member in battle. She has the worst skills, the worst arts, and an okay weapon setup with knives and psycho launchers. So yeah, she's not very useful. Now, none of that was why this quest ended up being one of the most difficult in the early game. You see, Hope's first affinity quest has you going to Cauldros. Cauldros is the worst area in Mira, with high-level enemies that detect you from far away and lava that you're constantly falling into. Not only that, but in order to get there, I needed to walk through Sylvalum, the other high-level area. Sylvalum is probably my favorite continent from an aesthetic point of view. The white sandy terrain and crystalline trees make it feel ethereal. On top of this, the music is some of the best I've heard so far. Anyway, Hope asks us to head to Cauldros, and thus we need to carefully trek through 2 entire continents on foot, just to recruit the worst party member. I died so many times. Suddenly, Xenoblade Chronicles became Metal Gear Solid. I finally made it to Cauldros and wrapped up the quest. At this point, I had gained enough experience that I completed the Samurai Gunner class path. Each path comes with skills and weapon-specific arts. After completing Samurai Gunner, which the main reason I leveled this branch first was to use longswords and their damaging arts, I then started leveling up the Pyro Corruptor class in order to get one of the best skills in the game. More on that later. After this, I started Fry's affinity quest. Fry likes to drink and party, and he looks like it. The most interesting thing about him is his connection to Fog. I noticed that you can't have both of them in a party at the same time, but I wasn't sure why. Fry is middle of the road as far as combat goes. He has long swords for damage and miniguns for long-range damage and some tanking, but Lyn, HP, and L are far superior. The next few side quests I did taught me more about the main cast. First, I completed an affinity mission with Lyn. Apparently, Blade was forced to bring in this young genius mechanic, which is hilarious because we were introduced to her via a skell she maintained, blowing up and crashing. To be honest, I don't like Lyn and feel nothing when it comes to her story. The dev team half commits to some sort of big brother or long-lost father relationship between her and Lao. This honestly could have worked and justified the use of a 13-year-old girl, but it's just pulled out when required, so there's no real emotional weight behind it. The more interesting story was Elma's. Elma fought the alien invasion on Earth and was tied to some sort of special skell, though she doesn't expand on that. To be honest, Xenoblade Chronicles X is such a confusing game to analyze. There are so many terrible decisions made during development. Lyn and Tatsu are annoying. The writing floats between this...
I wish I could join an Elite Blade team. Maybe if I wasn't screwing up on the job all the time.
And this...
Tatsu is at your disposal. What can Tatsu provide for Chef Lindley?
Your liver.
And the story structure is so obscure it feels like they didn't want you to follow it. But with all that being said, damn it, am I enjoying myself. Xenoblade X is a complete blast to play. The battle system is tight, responsive, and lacks much of the wait time Xenoblade Chronicles had. The missions somehow feel weightier, despite the weird structure. And I'm getting invested in some of these characters. Some. Overall, despite everything, Xenoblade Chronicles X is a fun game. I accept an affinity mission focusing on Lao, but once we meet up with his team, he's not there. While traveling, Lyn and Elma explain that Lao boarded the White Well, but his wife and child didn't make it on board. They died with Earth, leaving him alone. Elma asked Lao's team where he is, but none of them know. They say he disappears all the time, so Elma takes charge and we help them finish planting their probe. Lao finds us afterwards and thanks us for taking care of things, but won't share why he disappeared. I noticed I had been accumulating these tickets from time to time, and upon further inspection found they can be used to purchase rare items and unique outfits. This old Japanese-looking chest strap looks cool. I'm sure I won't regret buying this later when I realize that these tickets are an online resource and I'm not playing online, so the only way to get them is waiting real-time days. It's been a while since I completed a story quest, and after finishing up everything available, I jump into Chapter 6. Blade captures footage of some shadowy indigens attacking the ganglion. Elma's team is sent to investigate before our perspective switches to the alien threat. Guaxia is talking to a large Xeno named Luxar. This is the leader of the ganglion, and they converse about finding more clues to the Great One. A lot of what is said here made no sense at the time, but here are some of the more important bits. Luxar says they engaged the enemy above Earth, but who were the other aliens? I did not catch this in the original version on the Wii U, but the war above Earth was not between the ganglion and Earthlings. There was a second alien threat the ganglions were fighting, and their battle destroyed Earth. This is very important for later. Luxar also says that they can't escape the confines of a phenomenon, but what that phenomenon is, we don't know yet. Lao and Elle stop by the barracks to talk to us about our upcoming mission. Alright, this is Elle. Sorry, I probably should have removed the helmet. They relay that there is a crash site that the ganglions are trying to get to. Apparently there are tainted indigens there that attack anything in sight. Lao is adamant that we need to get to the crash site before the ganglions. There is some more story that tries to build up Lin and Lao's relationship, but to be honest, there isn't even enough payoff for me to try to explain it, so let's just move on. We get to the crash site, and for whatever reason, the tainted indigens don't attack us. What we find is a large, black alien scale. Elma says it's not from Earth or the ganglions. Lin's scanner doesn't even know what material it's made out of. Our team notices that an oppressive energy is emanating from it, and Elma makes this comment.
It's as if the ghost of its pilot is somehow still lingering. And that material there, at its core, it's dark matter. This must be their handiwork.
Whose handiwork, Elma? Mind sharing with the class? Hey, Cross, can you say something? Oh, right. All right, this is just so stupid. So we get the mech excavated and are about to leave when Tatsu's lunch he packed attracts the tainted monsters. Okay, at least Tatsu is finally plot relevant. We fight the Alpha Indigen, but the battle is interrupted by a Telethia who eats the tainted. The presence of this creature is only half explained through a late game side quest, but more importantly, weren't Telethia the original form, the High Entia on Bionis? What is this thing doing here? We head back and Lin and Elma, and I guess Cross, investigate the Dark Scale. Lin theorizes that it doesn't have a power source and might be some sort of alien god or idol. She notices a cavity in the chest, which means it can be piloted. Commander Vandam says Elma's Skell, the Ares, should be studied. Lao seems to watch Elma for a response. What is even going on here? What and where is the Ares? Back in the headquarters of the Ganglion, a new race of Xeno warriors show up to speak with Grandmaster Luxar. Their leader, Gajar, is the former prince of their people before they were forced to join the Ganglion. Luxar commands him to lead a charge against the humans. He's reluctant to work with Luxar, but his people will be killed if he doesn't comply. And with that, we can now get our Skell license. I have a lot to say here, so buckle up. In order to unlock your Skell, you have to complete a set of 8 side quests. Once you do that, the very first scene ever shown of this title is revealed. I find it interesting that this was what Takahashi and team chose to announce their new title. Like I said at the top, Takahashi's feedback was to add giant robots. And add giant robots he did, but the cool game mechanic came at a severe cost. After gaining your mech, you can now use it to run, drive, and jump to previously unreachable areas. Later we'll unlock the ability to fly, which opens the entirety of this world. At first, nothing seems wrong. Traveling on foot could take a long time, and being able to blaze past hazards to your next probe placement seems very convenient. But soon I realized that the convenience fundamentally changed the way I play X, and not in a good way. Skells ruined both battle and exploration in Xenoblade X. They trade that sense of discovery and progression for essentially a gimmick. Let's start with battle. Your avatar has multiple classes that, when mastered, give you permanent access to the arts and skills. The different routes you can take in battle are endless. Cross can be an attacker, a tank, a healer, a debuffer, or a combination of all the above. It's completely up to you. At this point in the game, you've at least mastered one entire branch of the class tree, so you're well on your way to creating that custom character. Fighting in this way is exhilarating as you can time your cooldowns in a way that you are never idle, which is why Xenoblade X's battle system is such a monumental improvement over its predecessor. Battle in the Skells is entirely different. It's simpler, which wouldn't be a problem if it wasn't for the fact that, playing the game normally, it's the strongest way to fight. Skells arts are decided by the weapons equipped to your mech. You have slots in the shoulders, arms, waist, and so on. This fills your art palette with high damaging, high cooldown attacks. As an example, I'm going to place both these battles side by side. Notice how visceral and energetic battle is on foot compared to your Skells. Fighting in your Skell is essentially a burst of damage with a long cooldown period, but again, If you're not building your character to be absolutely broken, the amount of damage a scale does far surpasses your normal damage. So it is, by default, the optimal way to play. Normal enemies will go down with a single attack. I'm sure the devs noticed this issue at some point because there were two methods introduced to throttle your use of the scales. One is that all scales burn fuel by moving, flying, and using arts. The stronger your art, the more fuel you use. The second is cost. Scales are insanely expensive. Unfortunately, neither really does what it's supposed to. I never considered the cost of fuel for my arts when arming my scale, and rarely ran out of fuel. If I did, I simply purchased more. As for the costs, at first, this does stop you from purchasing the strongest mechs for your entire party, but it does nothing to stop you using the scales for exploration. Exploration in the scale is not fun. It's that simple. In fact, you can't even really call it exploration. The only time it feels like actual exploration was flying to floating continents in the sky. Before gaining a scale, you had to find your way on foot to the story waypoints. This led you through caves, mountain canyons, forests, and even climbing large structures. It was exhilarating, and I was having a lot of fun. The world of Mira is dense with things to do, monsters to fight, and places to see. This is what exploration looks like in the scale. Sure, it's fast and more efficient, but at what cost? The scale, unfortunately, hurts this title more than it helps. It feels like a mechanic from an entirely different game that was dropped into this one without balancing or testing. Scales break Xenoblade X. And how do you know I'm right? Because this mechanic never shows up like this ever again. Never again are you able to freely pilot a mech in a Xenoblade title. This brings me to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, that may have felt like an insane pivot. This is a retrospective of the Xenoblade Chronicles series after all. Why are we bringing up Nintendo's popular IP, Legend of Zelda? Well, you see, during development of Xenoblade X, Nintendo was starting work on their new massive project, a complete reimagining of the Zelda franchise. This would be an open-world Zelda, where Link didn't follow the traditional structure found in all previous titles. It was a bold, new design, which meant that Nintendo needed some bold, new minds to help them create it. Monolith Soft historically had been the first outside studio ever to be brought in to work on a Zelda game. During the development of Skyward Sword, the studio was hired to work on assets for the title. This helped lay the framework of their partnership. During this time, Nintendo had treated Monolith Soft as a separate dev team hired to do a singular task, but when it came to Breath of the Wild, Monolith Soft's position was entirely different. You see, the Nintendo devs didn't know the right way to approach such a massive map. Luckily, Monolith had just spent the past year and a half solving this very problem. As development of Xenoblade X wrapped up, more and more devs were brought over to work on Breath of the Wild in areas like character design, animation, environmental modeling, and most importantly, level design. If you played both Xenoblade Chronicles X and Breath of the Wild, you will see the connection. This partnership would lead to the eventual purchase of Monolith Soft by Nintendo. The reason I'm diving into this history now is to make this singular point. Imagine playing Zelda Breath of the Wild and halfway through, getting access to a ship that can race across any terrain or simply fly to any point on the map without consequence. This would have destroyed the very nature of the title. Even in Tears of the Kingdom, they built limitations to all the different vehicles you could construct. Now, I wouldn't say scales destroy Xenoblade X entirely, but they do take away a vital component that the player will never get back, at least in exploration. Luckily, there is something we can do to keep battle interesting. We can break things even further. Now that we have the scale, I can start using grinding methods to quickly unlock the entire class tree, along with its skills and arts. First, I purchased the largest AoE attacking weapon for my scale, called the Phoenix. After that, I pile on insect enemy damage enhancing augments, which are items that can be set to weapons and armor to buff certain attributes. Then I head over to this canyon in Oblivia and unleash that attack, taking out high-level insect enemies that provide multiple level ups and class points each time. Once I set off my attack, I simply exit my scale, die, and respawn. Rinse and repeat. For now, this is the best way to grind in the early game. Once flight is unlocked, we'll head to a different location, but for now I leveled until I unlocked one of the best skills in the game, Core Crusher. Similar to the scales, Core Crusher is such a monumentally broken ability that it fundamentally changes how you play Xenoblade X. But unlike the scales, Core Crusher actually makes battle more enjoyable, not less. Nearly every enemy in the game is made up of different appendages you can attack. If you get the appendage health bar to 0, it will break and provide you with rare material. Core Crusher does 2 things with this. If you have an ether-based weapon, it gives you a 2.5x boost to your damage in exchange for not being able to destroy appendages. Now that's already an insane damage boost, but if you add on a specific weapon augment called Appendage Crusher, Core Crusher's inability to break appendages means that you have an infinite damage boost. If you equip 5 Appendage Crushers, that will be an additional 250% increase to your attack, meaning when optimized, this build gives you a 500% increase to overall damage. There is one downside to this. Pretty much any optimal build will be locked to ether-based weapons, meaning weapon variety goes out the window, but it's a cheap price to pay for so much raw damage. Unfortunately for us, we need the rarest material in the game, Bongelium, to create Appendage Crushers. So before moving on with the story, I head to Caldros and place a few probes, which is much easier with the scales. Now that I've explained all that, let's continue with some affinity quests. The next party member I unlocked is Lysel. Lysel is a new party member added into the Definitive Edition, and you can tell this is new material as Commander Vandam's voice actor has changed.
Heads up. We just received an urgent request from Granada GG. It's direct from their chief engineer.
Lysel's entire purpose is to introduce a new scale frame we can obtain in the Definitive Edition. I will admit that this scale is pretty awesome looking, but Lysel herself is stupid. Her story is, how do I say this, a bit on the nose maybe? It's essentially a rebuke on capitalism and big corporation corruption, which, okay, that's fine. But Lysel is written with such a lack of charisma that it just comes off as stupid. Fortunately for us, Lysel is much better in battle. She uses the spear, which again is the worst melee weapon, but she has access to dual guns, which are the best long-range weapon, meaning she lands somewhere in the upper end of the best party members. One thing that is important in this affinity quest is that Lysel mentions the legendary hero Alois Bernholt, whom, if you remember from the opening, is the one who battled the Xeno attack on the White Whale. The final thing I do before moving on to Chapter 7 is complete an affinity quest with L that unlock the ability to add slots to my weapons. These slots are where we'll equip augments, which we'll need once we have enough Bongelium to create Appendage Crushers. Chapter 7 of the main story doesn't really tell us much aside from the fact that the Ganglions know more about the Lifehold Core and the human race than they should. This implies that they're getting information from someone on the inside. The biggest lingering question about the Ganglions, aside from how they know so much, is why do they want the dark mech we found? And why do they want the human race destroyed? Elma and the crew battle Goetia, who dies as her mech explodes. This is another minor issue with the Xenoblade X's story. The antagonists are inconsistent. For a while it seemed like Goetia was going to be our opposition, but she dies only to introduce a different enemy, then another, then another. It's not a massive issue as the story isn't a main focus, but either way, it continues to needlessly complicate an already sporadic storyline. Before continuing with Chapter 8, we complete another Lao-focused quest where he expresses that relationships between Mims is meaningless as they're not real humans. The bitterness makes sense as his wife and child's death could possibly have been averted with this technology. We start Chapter 8 and... an alarm sounds across all of New LA, warning of an approaching threat to the city. The Ganglions are attacking. Secretary Nagi announces that they are going to war with the hostile alliance, and we get a cool scene showing many of the story characters prepping. Elma's team is put in charge of protecting the administrative district, and Lau, Irina, and Doug are ordered to guard the hangar that houses the Dark Scale. I think Chapter 8, from a story perspective, might be one of the best. Unfortunately, due to the massive imbalance of difficulty, I cut through the enemies like a hot knife through butter. As the battle grows fierce, Lau suggests that another team protect the mech so the others can fight. Back with Elma's team, a giant Ganglion ship passes over the city and the battle moves into the streets. In the commercial district, the cat-like race of warriors, called the Rothians, attack while Elma and Cross confront another new enemy. This is Dagon and Rise. Rise is a complete psychopath, if you couldn't tell by her design. Not much is known about the two at this point, but just like all the other Ganglions, Rise hates the humans. We absolutely body the two of them in a boss fight, Elma telling her to go back to her leaders and inform them that the humans are willing to negotiate. Prince Gajar takes the black mech, which is called the Vita, from the hangar. It would seem this was the plan all along. As he flies away from the city, Gajar laments that another civilization must burn. In the aftermath, the others head back to the hangar. Everyone thinks that losing the mech wasn't a huge deal as they didn't really know what it was in the first place. Lau apologizes, saying this wouldn't have happened if he hadn't ordered everyone to join the fight. This causes Elma to grow suspicious. She doesn't understand how they knew the humans had the mech, nor where they were keeping it. Because of this, she begins to suspect Lao, but chooses to say nothing at the moment. Back at the Ganglion stronghold, Luxar celebrates the return of the Great One, the black mech called the Vita. Having wrapped up Chapter 8, I return to side missions. I start with the Affinity mission for Secretary Nagi. I really like Nagi, but for whatever reason, from this point forward, his relevance in the story completely vanishes. And I mean it. He plays no more significance in the main story, and it's baffling. Perhaps it has to do with us being able to use him in battle. Nagi is the only party member, aside from Cross, that has 5 skill slots. His access to longswords also means he puts out some of the highest damage, so he's definitely a useful party member. Unfortunately, as our build becomes more broken, party members become, well, less useful. Starting Chapter 9 and trying not to crash out on this cooking mechanic at the beginning of every story chapter, we once again detect a piece of the lifehold in Sylvalum. Lao's team has been sent to capture it, but the Ganglions attacked and Lao's been injured. We find Lao, who once again displays an apathy towards Mimiazomes. He tells us to go on ahead and secure the lifehold. At this point, I really don't trust this guy, and Elma probably should have known this was a trap. But, well, she doesn't say anything and we get ambushed by the Rothians. Seeing no way out, Elma tells everyone to lower their weapons and offers herself as a hostage in exchange for the safety of her team. Gajar says his orders are to deliver them to the Ganglion stronghold for whatever reason. I don't understand this part. It's never really explained. If I'm to guess, this is the writers trying to find a way for Elma and Gajar to speak to each other. Gajar reveals that Luxar fears the humans gaining their real bodies. Elma realizes that Gajar doesn't care for the Ganglion, and so she pulls the pride card.
Wait. First, I have a question. How has a noble species such as yours allowed itself to be reduced to such disgrace?
What?
The Ganglion have committed unspeakable acts all across this planet. Surely you must know that. They kill without cause or mercy. Why would you serve such scoundrels? Why sink so low?
Mind your tone, human. Who are you to judge the prince's actions? What could you possibly know of our people's struggle? Of how our homeland was torn away from us?
It's true. I cannot say I understand your plight. But humanity lost its home, just like you. And yet we chose to stand up and fight the Ganglion.
The Ganglion have bought our compliance, yes. But make no mistake, the Rothians would never sell their pride.
Prince Gajar says they'll settle things the old-fashioned way, with a duel. I so wish this had been a challenging fight. It's such a shame that the difficulty is non-existent with these story battles. We beat the prince, and he jumps into his mech. I do as well, but then immediately jump out again as I do much more damage on foot with this build. The prince, beaten in battle, shares with us the location of the Ganglion stronghold and leaves. Switching over to Luxar aboard his ship, he receives a message from Gajar stating that the Rothian people will be independent of the Ganglion from this point forward. Back at New LA, we find out that Lao made it back alive. He's recovering. Elma pulls aside Doug and tells him that she suspects that he is the traitor. After completing Chapter 9, we unlock the flight module for our scale. This means that we have access to every area in the game. It also means that the true grind begins. There is so much we need to do here. First, I started by recruiting the remaining party members. Elma gets word that Rise and Dagan have been spotted, so we head out to confront them, only to find out that it's not them, but another strange pair. Celica and her monster friend Rock reveal that they're fugitives who are being hunted by the Ganglion. Apparently, the Ganglion wanted Rock as a weapon, but he's a pacifist who hates fighting. Celica's story is very interesting. As we do more affinity quests, we find out that Rock killed everyone in her village at the order of the Ganglion, but was freed by Celica. She's cared for him ever since. Celica is the single best party member in the entire game. Without going into the complexity of the battle system, which honestly just wouldn't be that interesting, Celica's combo of dual guns and knives make her a potential boosting goddess with Ghostwalker for invulnerability. Also, for the longest time, I knew I had heard her voice actor somewhere.
Don't you worry about a thing. Just give me a little time.
I did some research and found out it's the same voice actor as Sharon Kruger from the Cold Steel series, which is pretty cool.
Fall into death's embrace!
Speaking of voice actors, this cast is absolutely stacked with anime and JRPG talent. I won't go through them all, but anyone who's watched popular shonen anime will recognize many of these voice actors. I know I've already gone through this, but now that my scale can fly, I essentially can fast travel to anywhere without having to explore on foot. I think some might disagree with me, but this world wasn't built to be explored this way. While on foot, I found caves, unique enemies, and hidden paths. But flying around on my mech, I just kinda go from point A to point B. Here's an example of how this hurts exploration. Late in the game, around the time I was wrapping up the last of the hexagons, I found an entire pathway along with a cave system in Sylvalum I had never even seen until I was 100 hours in. And guess what? At that point, there was no reason to explore it as I was level 99 and had everything I needed for my final build. This is unacceptable in an open world game. The devs wasted their time creating so much dense content only to make me skim over it with a mech. Here's the most egregious example though. I've mentioned that you need to place these probes in order to unlock the map. Getting to probe points was half the gameplay while on foot. Some probe locations required you to battle high-level enemies, or find hidden paths to them. Now that I have a skill though, all I did was move from one point to the next until I placed every single probe. I didn't even bother exploring late game areas like Cauldros or Sylvalum because I could fly over all the hazards to get to where I wanted. This is so disappointing. Anyway, it's time to move on with the story. The director asks us to investigate some infighting among the Ganglion. Upon arriving at the scene, we find the Rothians in battle with the hostile alien force. After rescuing them, Elma suggests an alliance between the two races, which they agree to. Later on, Vandam comes to the barracks and tells us that they believe there's a spy among them. You think? He says that the Ganglion have been quiet since their retreat, and he doesn't know why. After meeting with the Rothians, we find out that the enemy's base is in Cauldros. New LA's tower is at 9%, meaning time is running out before we need to find the core. Switching to Rise, we find her fuming over her loss to the humans. She really hates us. Luxar is meditating in front of the Vita when a message is sent saying that Rise has stolen one of their weapons. Luxar grows irritated that his subordinates keep disobeying orders, which is kind of funny. Back to Elma's team, we're sent to fix a data probe in Sylvalum. Lynn is frustrated that we've mapped so much of the frontier nav and yet haven't found the Lifehold core.
What if the whole thing smashed to bits when it crashed down?
You know that's not possible.
Do I?
Our consciousnesses aren't here. They're controlling these MIMs remotely from the core. It can't have been destroyed. In fact, it has to be somewhere relatively close, or we would feel the lag.
You're right. I just...
It's okay, Lynn. I know you're tired. It's been a long couple of months. Being inside these MIMs takes its toll on all of us. It's only natural to feel like this. But I promise, it's going to be all right.
I really like Elma. Her stiff nature seems intentional now, and having her as the voice of the MC isn't too bad, though I do get tired of standing there looking stupid. A giant mech appears, and the team, noticing it's heading to New LA, scrambles to stop it. Did I mention I hate scale combat? To be honest, the fact that canonically we can destroy something this big is insane. After that, we wrap up chapter 10 and continue with some side quests. First, I do a bunch of the Rothian quests. We finalize the treaty with Gujar's people before Gujar says this.
Warriors of Earth, you have my thanks for your aid. From this day forth, know that the Rothians stand with you.
Thank you, Your Highness.
However, this pact lives only as long as the Ganglion. Once they expire, so too does this alliance. Mira's a harsh land. Should our survival mean your doom, it must be so.
Gujar is another party member, only available in the Definitive Edition. Gujar is the best Photon Saber user in the game, and has some decent reflect skills, making him a mid-tier tank. After that, I completed Nagi's final quest, which opened up one of the highest damaging arts in the game, or at least in the base game, Blossom Dance. Also, Nagi is a complete badass. I really like this character. Now that I have Blossom Dance and a flying scale, it's time to finish up my final game-breaking build. First, we head to the farthest tip of Noctilum. Here, inside this tree, is a ton of insects, and using the same method as before, but gaining a ton more class points for it, we spam Phoenix and wipe them out. After mastering all of the classes, I go around collecting certain material to create augments for my armor called Overdrive Gain TP. I know I haven't dove into the overdrive mechanic much. Actually, I haven't really talked about any of the battle mechanics in real depth, and there's a reason for that. They're too complex, and if I did explain them, it would ruin the pace of this essay, so instead, I'm going to try and summarize. While in Overdrive, there is a count that goes up with successful art usage. The higher the count, the higher the stat boost during Overdrive. You also gain TP, or tension points, from using arts and attacking. TP can be used to perform specific arts, and if you have full TP, 3000 to be exact, you can enter overdrive, which boosts your attack. This is where the overdrive gain TP augment comes in. If I equip the highest level overdrive TP up augment on all 5 pieces of armor, every time I go into overdrive, I will receive the maximum 3000 TP. Equipped another augment called Overdrive Count Up, and you can re-enter and exit overdrive until you have maxed out your counter. It looks something like this. Maximum overdrive counter not only buffs your attack but reduces arts cooldown while lowering the enemy's resistance. In essence, it's one of the best buff and debuffs in the entire game. The optimal build for this title is equipping a longsword for the highest damaging arts and equipping the dual guns for Ghostwalker, which makes you invulnerable while you set up your strategy. Assign the skill Appendage Crusher and equip an Ether attribute longsword, which if you are attacking an appendage will increase your damage dramatically. Add 5 Appendage Crushers to your weapon to further increase that damage by 250%. If you've done all that, this is the outcome.
You need an aura. May the blessings of Clue guide me with these. Well done.
Whenever you enter battle, boost your overdrive counter to 100 and you have a 10x boost to damage. This is a level 90 Tyrant and I'm level 56. Watch what this build does. From this point forward, I can one-shot every single enemy minus a handful of special Tyrants. The 3 hardest challenges in the game at this point are Gradavis, the Headless Emperor, Farseis, the Ever Queen, and Telethia, the Endbringer. Aside from those 3, nothing else is a challenge. Gradavis I didn't get to till later in the game, so I'll talk about him when we get there, but I tried fighting Farseis, the Ever Queen. This dragon thing is inside a large crystal tree in Sylvalum, and at the time, I thought I needed to beat her using my Skell, so I left that alone for now. Telethia, the Endbringer, I came back to multiple times through my playthrough. There's a small peak you can land on that allows you to fight on foot, but she has a 50% chance of reflecting ether attacks, so at first, I didn't even scratch her. Anyway, I spent a massive amount of time clearing out the tyrants across Mira with my new build while completing side quests. I wish I had more time to talk about some of these quests. They're not all unique, but some of them stood out. There's a questline inspired by Back to the Future where a scientist from the future is trying to fix up his time machine car to get back to the future. There's a massive set of quests that revolve around these hot assassin ladies and their sociopathic supercomputer, which they call Mother. I could go on about a few more, but this video is already getting pretty long. This brings me to the single most dubious side quest in the game, the lobster side quest. You see, we end up running across a terrorist that's hidden 99 lobster bombs throughout New LA. I spent days trying to find all these. Not in-game days, real-time days. They are impossible to spot. I looked for what felt like forever, only to find 16. Thankfully, RaiderKing.com had an extremely helpful guide which included checkboxes once you found the lobsters. Believe it or not, despite having a guide that told me exactly where they were, this was still a hard and time-consuming quest. I mentioned its dubious nature, and that's not only because you have to do this tedious fetch quest. No, it's for the lack of information you are given. If I hadn't been following a guide, I wouldn't have known that you can't find the 98th and 99th lobster until you complete Chapter 11. So you could have been searching for hours and find nothing. This is terrible game design, and one more reason why Xenoblade X is a stupid, but charming RPG. I finished off nearly every party member's affinity quest, but a looming problem started to rear its ugly head. Scale combat sucks so bad, and I invested so little that I couldn't even beat enemies on my same level. This worried me as I needed to take out Farseis at some point. I knew that I would need to invest a lot of time, energy, and in-game currency in order to have a chance, so I of course just ignored that and moved on. One affinity quest that I found to be very well done was Fog and Fries. You see, up until now, I haven't been able to have them both in a party together. During their final affinity quests, I found out why. Fog and Fry are brothers whose father chose to stay behind on Earth to let someone younger and stronger take his place. Fog accepted his father's choice, but Fry didn't, leading to a rift between them. Every once in a while, the intimate character development shines through, and this might be one of my favorites. I went back and tried fighting the Telethia Tyrant a few more times before giving up and moving on to Chapter 11. Elma's squad is alerted that Lao has escaped the Mimizone Center, and they head to the hangar to see what's going on. We find Lao there, ready to enter a dark armored Skell. Apparently he took classified intel during his escape. It's finally revealed that he's the Ganglion spy and says that he and the Ganglion had the same goal. We find out that the data Lau stole was an analysis of the different lifehold pieces we've discovered so far and contains the possible location of the core. After taking a copy, Lau destroyed the data, meaning we need to capture him if we want the information. The tower's percentage continues to count down, reaching 5% as we set off for the Ganglion stronghold in Kaldros. Because I'm silver leveled, this quote-unquote dungeon isn't really a dungeon at all. None of the enemies attack me because of the difference in levels, so I just kind of walk through the whole thing. We reach a large arena where we find Lau. He says a lot of things that don't quite make sense yet. Lau confirms that the Ganglion fear us getting our real bodies. He also says that he wants the human race to end and stop living a lie. Elma seems to know what he's talking about, but doesn't share anything. Lau says that we're already dead, that we burned up with Earth, which at the time seemed metaphorical, but later we find he meant that literally. I, of course, one-shot him in a boss fight before he continues his monologue. Lau believed that the White Well Project was going to be the first time that humanity worked together, but being forced to leave his family behind showed him that he was wrong. He also says this to Elma.
I never understood why humans separate themselves off. By race, by class, religion, country, age. As if it matters in the end. On a genetic level, the differences are insignificant.
No, not insignificant. Not to humans, but really. How could you understand, Elma?
So wait, is Elma not human? Also, why does she know so much about the Lifehold Core? Lau states that Elma lied about who was going to be on the ship in order to avoid chaos. Elma says she doesn't expect him to agree with their decisions. She pulls her gun on Lau and is about to fire when Lin jumps between them. Like I said, the effort and setup for this moment was minimal at best. I neither had feelings for Lau, nor did I have investment in his and Lin's relationship. The worst part is this could have easily been done. Change around a few things, like have Lau be Lin's adopted father or something. Perhaps she calls him dad to indicate they have commitments together. Without that though, Lin's actions are essentially, I believe in humanity, and Lau is part of humanity. Also, I join Lin because why the hell not? Lin gives a long melodramatic speech about humanity, and Lau gives her the data and says he gives up. What? There is no way that this teenage girl's limited experience around humanity was enough to erase the loss of this guy's wife and child. Not only that, but Lau caused the death of thousands of people in the siege of New LA. How in the world are we supposed to believe that this little girl's speech would turn all that around? Lau, after giving up both the data, himself, and the Ares, tells them that the Lifehold Core is being attacked by the Ganglion, but it has a defense system that's thwarting their attack. After that, we lead the injured Lau, Tatsu running forward to leave him with his lunch while he waits to be picked up.
Charmaine. Chenchi. I'm so sorry, girls. It seems like Papa can't come to be with you just yet. Damn it. I'm sorry. You watch over each other until I get there.
And we're back to side quests. Yes, we can go on with the story, which would be appropriate as our lives hang in the balance, but Xenoblade Chronicles X has no sense of pace, so I decided to wrap up everything I can before finishing out the final chapters of the base game. I finish off many of the remaining affinity quests and learn a few surprising facts. First, I find out that Nail Nail and Cecilia are sisters, which is cool. Apparently their race is born from plants. I also finished up Yelv's quest, which left me slightly confused, but it was still the most intriguing affinity quest line in the entire game. I also didn't play for 2 weeks straight. On purpose. Let me explain. You see, I don't play online games, nor do I enjoy online features in single-player titles like this. Xenoblade X's online appeal is mainly gathering up teams and taking out difficult tyrant fights. Unfortunately, there are certain material you can only obtain in online mode. It's also where you collect tickets, which then can be exchanged for exclusive outfits, rare material, including the online material, and weapons and scales. The ticket cost of these items is supposed to scale with online play, which means that if you're playing offline, the only way to obtain tickets is the daily sign-on bonus. I got around 250 tickets per day, and at this point, I needed enough to buff up my skill for the battle with Farsis, the Ever Queen. So I just took a 2-week break, logging in each day to gather tickets, and I got 3,000. And it wasn't enough. I did learn much later that completing the Frontier Nav nets you way more tickets, which I then used to complete my skill build. After wrapping up all the side quests I could find, I started the final chapter of the Wii U version, Chapter 12. The Chief General announces that they have found the Lifehold Core and readies the blades for a full-on assault. Elma's team have their final meal, but Doug says we shouldn't be celebrating. Okay, let's talk about these choices I can make in conversation. I am not a fan of this type of gameplay. It's built more for the illusion of choice more than anything else. If you are going to give my character choice in a game, I want it to actually mean something. I want it to sway the conversation one way or the other, or move towards a custom outcome dependent on my choices. This is my only issue though. Look how awkward this is. The music stops and everything freezes. If you want a true example of choice done right, look at Shepard in the Mass Effect trilogy. Either way, everyone says good luck and we head out to the core.
Elma, there it is.
Damn, they got to it already.
No, not yet. Look where it meets the water.
Is that a force field?
The lifebolt was designed to sustain human life at all costs. The defensive shields that surround the core won't go down so easily.
Alright, what is going on with Elma? Why is she in charge of saving the human race? Who is she? We gather our forces and fly out. This is the only time party members are seen in a main story cutscene, which is interesting. If I hadn't completed the Affinity quest, then these would just be NPCs. Since I did complete them though, the entire cutscene holds so much weight behind it.
Focus on clearing our approach, then defend our position once we're in. That is your priority, not destroying all enemy craft. Are we clear?
Team Cressida, roger.
Trishula, roger.
Ningirsu, roger.
Balma, roger.
Team Surtur, roger. We'll take out any hostiles along your approach.
We reach the core, and Elma activates the system, which lets us in. Back with the Ganglion, Grandmaster Luxar is frustrated that his forces haven't destroyed the core yet. One of his subordinates points out that a Trion barrier is protecting it. Luxar has no idea how the humans obtained so much advanced alien technology and wonders if we are descendants of the Origin. He decides that he'll take the Vita, the Great One, and take care of the humans himself. I mentioned that this game has a major villain issue. The reason for that is none of these weirdos feel threatening at all. We started with Goetia, who had potential, but pretty much died immediately. Then we got Jagar and the Rothians, who quickly became our allies. Then we had Rise, who also had potential, but despite piloting an oversized mech, was beaten. Luxar may be the worst though. All we've seen of this guy is subordinate after subordinate disobeying him and him getting angry like a petulant child. This guy has the presence of a burnt piece of toast. Elma's team finds the core, and we are greeted with a beautiful cutscene. Gosh, the music here is fantastic. Everyone's confused because there are no stasis pods in the core. Elma decides to finally share the secret of the Lifeboat core with us.
Then where are all the people we brought with us from Earth?
You're all controlling these MIMs from your real bodies, asleep in stasis. That's the explanation you were given by NLA, or should I say ECP officials. That was the official story, but it's not the whole truth.
Colonel, what do you mean?
Before she can explain further, Luxar attacks. Elma asks him why the humans are such a threat, but Luxar ignores her question. He realizes that Elma is responsible for the Trion barrier, the Skells, and everything else that's kept the humans alive. We go into battle, and I cream him. Beaten, Luxar states that the Sumerians, the original beings of the universe, created the Ganglions, building in the ability to control them. Humans are descendants of the Sumerians, and he fears that if left alone, they'll one day enslave his people. The Vita transforms, and we head into another boss fight. Luxar is defeated and dies. Elma is finally able to tell us what's going on, but not before we get a eating Tatsu joke.
Tatsu even wants to be part of the victory feast. Isn't that right, Tatsu?
When Earth was facing destruction, Elma and the leadership knew that the Arks wouldn't be able to hold everyone. so they devised a plan. The memories of everyone on Earth would be uploaded into this machine, which resembles the Zohar from Xenogears, and then implanted into bodies created from the ectoplasmic liquid inside the core. Luxar's mech raises up once more and it attacks, damaging the core's computer. This sets off its internal defense system, which uses the pods to create bioweapons. Lao suddenly appears and takes out Luxar while we take out the core's defenses. Lao states the obvious, saying that it was Luxar who actually killed his family since they, destroyed Earth, and the two of them tumble into the human DNA below.
Lao! Damn it! Get him out of there!
This is human DNA. It was true. It was all true.
Lao and Luxar begin to absorb the DNA, fusing into a large monster worthy of a final boss. Boop! Oh, and one more phase. Boop! We find out that the Sumerians created the ganglion to be their slaves, and built a failsafe which would destroy them if they ever lost control. Lao and Luxar disappear, and Lin checks the core's computers. Everything is still intact. Elma is about to restore the system, but pauses.
Colonel?
Everyone wait. There's one more thing I need to talk to you about.
Oh man, what now?
The truth is, exactly one MIM in New LA actually is being controlled remotely from a real body held in stasis here.
Wait, someone isn't stored in the database with the rest of us?
That's right. This was a special case.
The hell does that mean?
Better just to show you. Colonel!
Elma is dead?
No. I think this is...
I haven't died. My consciousness has just returned to my real body.
Elma's true form is revealed, and using her specific genetic code, she activates the backup power, stopping the power outage of all the Mimiosomes. We ask Elma what she is, and Elma says it's a long story. As we pan over at New LA, Lynn recites Elma's story for us, so I guess it wasn't too long. Alright, this is in post, but it looks like the song that plays during this scene is copyrighted, so this is what happens. Elma's planet was attacked by the Ganglions, and then later on the Ghosts. She escaped her planet and came to Earth to warn the humans of what was coming. She taught them how to make skulls to fight the aliens and gave them light speed so they could travel through space. The only reason the humans are still alive is because Elma came to save them. We get the credits and one of the most aggravating cliffhangers in RPG history. We find Elma searching inside the core. They break open the doors to where all of humans' memories are stored to find that it's all been destroyed. In fact, it's been like this ever since they crashed down on Mira. They wonder why they're still there, and Elma says it's something to do with the mystery of the planet. We then cut to a scene where Lao is lying on a beach. And this is where the Wii U version of Xenoblade Chronicles X ends. As one can imagine, this was an insane place to stop the story, and at the time, it left players confused if it was even over. There was no New Game Plus or additional story to be had outside of the side quests, so yeah, it just kinda ends. Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Wii U was universally praised, receiving an 84 Metacritic score. Time magazine awarded the game a perfect grade, declaring it hands down the best role-playing game of 2015. Both Destructoid and IGN noted its breathtaking world and exploration. It wasn't without its criticism though. The UI was probably the most notable of these complaints. Not only did the game do a poor job training you on its mechanics, but the presentation was small and the font for the display was hard to read. Another critique was the narrative's structure and pace, which felt disjointed and confusing. Many regard the change from a character-driven narrative as a mistake, and let's not forget the massive cliffhanger, which many did not appreciate. From a commercial standpoint, Xenoblade X had a massive problem. Despite the game being loved by critics, the platform it was published exclusively for, the Wii U, suffered abysmal sales. Because of this, Xenoblade X did not sell well at all. In Japan, 85,000 units sold, but in the West, the reception was much better. During its global launch week, the game sold 441,000 units, and by the end of the Wii U's life cycle, that number was at around 800,000. The only upside of these numbers was that if you considered the limited amount of Wii U consoles, 800,000 represented a very large portion of that limited market. By 2024, the Xenoblade series had exploded in popularity, almost all of it due to the Nintendo Switch sales. Over 7 million copies had sold across Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Fans were clamoring for ports of many failed Wii U titles, Xenoblade Chronicles X sitting at the top of that list. But unfortunately, Monolith Soft had been quiet on that front. It wasn't until October 29, 2024 that a trailer was dropped. X would get a definitive edition like its predecessor, but this would not be a simple remaster. Monolith had reworked the UI to be readable, had restructured the party system so you could use whichever party members you wanted in battle, completely reworked the graphics to be in line with the series' anime tone, and most importantly, added a final chapter that would conclude the storyline and bring it into the main series' Xenoverse. Although this new chapter meant that fans couldn't expect a Xenoblade Chronicles X sequel, it did address, well, most of the unfinished story threads and gave closure to the world of Mira. So let's jump into the conclusion of this massive saga and see where the story of Earth's survival ends. Alright, to summarize, as far as the story goes, we have multiple plots that need to wrap up. We now know that Elma came from a distant planet to warn Earth of the approaching enemy, but we still don't know who she is. We also don't know who the other aliens attacking the ganglion above Earth were. There are many other questions like, if the core is destroyed and all the stored human souls are lost, why are the Mimeosomes still alive? Who were the Sumerians? Who is the hero everyone talks about? And finally, why does my character not have any memories of who he is? As for gameplay, we have one monumental task, and that is to complete 100% of the Frontier Nav. This means exploring every area and finishing its tasks, whether that's material retrieval, a side quest completed, or a tyrant taken down. This also includes the 3 tyrants I've been unable to beat, one of which I can't fight on foot, which means I need to put all my attention on an optimal build for my skill. So in summary, this is where the true grind begins. Upon booting up the game, it's obvious this content came years later. Many voice actors didn't return, so a lot of the characters just kinda don't talk. Also, Vandam's voice actor was changed, and I can't unhear the difference.
Walking and talking, we shouldn't raise any alarms?
First thing I did was switch Alexa into my party to better boost my skills. I then go and one-shot a unique enemy to get the best longsword in the game. It's a katana, and I realize that Cross is now the ultimate edgelord. I grind for material to create the best scale weapons as well as melee attack up augments for my sword. This will boost my damage on foot even further. I started my completion journey with Primordia since it's the first area and I easily finish up all of its hexagons. I try my hand at the Telethia, thinking I'm stronger now, but get my butt handed to me, so I move on to some of the endgame side quests. I first tackle the final lobster for the lobster side quest. To be honest, I have no idea how I was supposed to find this thing without a guide. You would think that a massive patient testing quest like this would have some awesome payoff and reward at the end, but it just doesn't. The craziest part was finally walking across Cauldros. This place is fascinating, and yet, due to my skill, I don't think I ever really walked around until the post-game. After wrapping up the last of the Affinity quests, I felt I was strong enough to beat Gradavis, the Headless Emperor. Despite this tyrant being 10 levels beneath me, it has the highest HP of any monster in the game and can instantly kill you if you're not ready for it. This battle was so satisfying. I transcended, putting everything I learned into this fight. I got Cross in a perfect gameplay loop where I would cast Ghostwalker for invulnerability, then buff and attack, casting Ghostwalker as soon as it wore off. I was invincible and through sheer timing was able to take Gradavis down. After that, I gathered all the material I needed to complete the best skill in the game, the Ares 90. This is the black scale Lao piloted, and unless you want to put a ton of work into the more customizable mechs, out of the box, the Ares 90 is simply the best. I headed over to Oblivia to start clearing out hexes when I came across... Mia. Mia is the second to last party member we recruit, and I honestly have no idea why she's here. She's mid in battle, and I didn't even bother taking heavy notes on her story. In fact, I mostly just skipped it. Now that I have the Ares 90, I decided on a strat that is built entirely around boosting your first attack. The Ares 90 had this massive cannon art that did insane damage, so I figured if I equipped enough first attack buff augments, I could just one-shot Farsees the Everqueen. I've spoken so much about the strange progression of this title, but here's one more example. So I'm grinding for material to make the best augments in the game. I've taken out a dozen tyrants, and you would think that they'd be the place to get endgame material, but they're not. It's these random beetles and hot space wizards I need to grind, not massive dinosaurs who test my abilities. After an hour of grinding, I was finally able to test out my scale's damage. Yeah, that will do. I whittled down the hexagons to select a few, and for a moment, I thought I was close to being done. But what I did not know is that I would spend the same amount of time trying to complete the last 15 hexagons as I did clearing the entire map. And almost all of it had to do with these 3 tyrants. Not the high level ones I talked about earlier. No, these aren't difficult to beat in battle. They're difficult to spawn in the overworld. You see, these 3 tyrants, unfortunately, were locked behind rare weather patterns, which the only way to manipulate weather into appearing is by exiting and re-entering the map. I spent 50 minutes trying to get a fog to appear in Noctilum, only to get nothing. My wife took this video of me talking to my sister, explaining what I was doing.
When we make fog.
Yep.
Instead of just like you have to find fog.
Yep. It's just like, this is it. That's all it is.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I'm wondering, because by the way, there's fog here, but every continent, there's 4 continents. Each continent has a rare weather pattern, and there's a monster that you have to defeat during that weather pattern. So I have not killed any of them yet. After, I kid you not, another few hours of nothing, I just gave up and focused on other sections, knowing all too well I'd have to come back to the fog at some point. I finished off side quests, completed some affinity quests with Gajar, Lyn, and Mia, then went back to the fog grind. Holy cow, I can't believe I got that. My family celebrated with me. I spent 3 entire days trying to get this damn fog to appear. I almost didn't believe it when I saw the icon at the top. Finally, I had beaten the hidden tyrant. The other 2 weren't nearly as bad, but instead of days to spawn, they only took a few hours. I finished up Elma's final affinity quest, learning about her previous team's death. We take out the monster who took them out, bringing closure to her mourning. The coolest part of completing the affinity quest lines is unlocking art specific to that character. By completing Elma's, I got Ghost Factory, which makes my entire team invulnerable for a certain amount of hits. Now that I've cleared every hexagon in the game minus 2, I decided to fight the Telethia and Farsees one last time. I figured out the footing for the Telethia, but Farsees is going to be another story altogether. My scale did almost no damage despite all the work I put into its build. Demoralized, I decided to start Chapter 13, which is broken up into 3 acts. Having found and activated the core, the tower in New LA now says power generation. In the distance, a strange portal appears. Similar to Future Connected, it would seem that a void or voids are growing here as well. Elma's team is tasked with observing the new phenomenon which seems to be growing. As we're out on recon, dark aliens burst from the void. Elma calls them ghosts. Hundreds of them attack, and we're about to be overwhelmed when someone in a shining scale appears. This is the Ares Prime, the scale that fought on Earth and when the White Whale was attacked in space. During that battle, it disappeared along with its pilot. The Ares Prime drives off the ghosts, but notices something approaching and flies away as the Vita chases after it. Wait, I thought we destroyed that thing back at the core. Having narrowly avoided death, we return and report to Vandam. Now, something you should know about this multi-part chapter is that the majority of it is a bunch of people standing and talking. Riveting stuff, I know. Elle asks about the ghosts, and Elma reveals that they were the second race of aliens that fought the Ganglion above Earth. The Ganglions lost and were driven off, but Earth was destroyed in the process. Elma says the ghosts are an omen for Mira, signaling its destruction, just like Earth and her own homeworld.
The planet of my birth lay in a vastly distant corner of the universe, and evolved differently from Earth. But like Earth, it was home to descendants of the ancient Sumerians. We didn't wage war against other worlds. Ours was a peace-loving race. Till the Ganglion struck. without a whisper of warning. Their aim was nothing less than to completely eradicate Simar's legacy. And furthermore, to claim the Ares.
Elma and Ares Prime were sent to Earth to warn them of the Ganglion and Ghost threat. Using the Ares Prime as a template, the humans created scales to prepare for the invasion. Unfortunately, the new weaponry wasn't enough, and we found ourselves stranded on Mira. The Ares Prime and the Vita appear on New LA's scanners, and we head out to find them. Elma states that the Ares Prime is our only hope for saving Mira from the ghosts. We find the Ares and Vita locked in battle, and after a long fight, the Vita prevails and absorbs the flashing orbs all over the Ares body. These orbs are the core power of the Ares Prime. Ghosts interrupt the Vita and drive it away, but it's too late. The power of the Ares Prime has been taken. The others question if the Vita and Ghosts are enemies, but Elma states that the Ghosts don't have sides, they just destroy. Someone exits the scale, and the others are surprised to see Al, the hero. This is Alois Bernhold, the one mentioned in a few of the Definitive Edition side quests. He's also a bit of an irritating change made to the story. You see, I mentioned that ultimately, this was a story about Mira. Cross, Elma, and Lynn were only side characters to that larger narrative. Well, not any longer. Al is now the main character, and he knows it. In fact, everyone knows it. You will not believe how often everyone talks about Al.
Al here might just be the chosen one.
So yeah, we weren't introduced. His star had risen too quickly.
You know, the first time I met Al,
The hero returns, and with him our hearts are all uplifted.
Anyway, he steps out of the defeated Ares and calls Elma princess. She seems pissed to see him, which is interesting. I said he's talked about a bunch, and that is a problem because it makes the storytelling feel forced and awkward. What I did not say is I didn't like him. Al is instantly charming, all things considered, and probably should have been the main character from the beginning. The real issue here, and the main issue I have with the entire additional story introduced in the Definitive Edition, is that Cross becomes so insignificant that the only real significance he does have is gifted to him by the all-amazing Al.
You got a lot to learn.
I'm not sure what Monolith originally had planned, but it's obvious that Cross actually plays zero significance in this storyline. Anyway, let's move on. As I said, everyone is amazed to see Al again. Those who didn't know him before he disappeared are surprised at how normal he seems compared to the legends. They head back to New LA where the Ares Prime is being repaired. Vandam is surprised like everyone else to see Al. He also asks if the ghosts have it out for the Vita.
Does that mean they consider the Ganglion to be a bigger threat than us?
Ghosts don't have that kind of independence. They swarm whatever happens to be in front of them, like iron filings drawn to a magnet. You can think of them as a force of nature. The conclusion my world's scientists arrived at was this. Ghosts are in essence the universe's corrective system. End quote.
a system? I think I get it. Like animals' instincts. Nature's way of protecting itself. Is it that kind of thing?
And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice. From the four horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying, to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates, and the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men. Sound familiar? You might have heard it, in some shape or form.
This whole philosophical angle is fascinating. I mean, Tatsu asks if God is real. That amount of existential philosophy isn't new to the Xeno series, but it's certainly not something I was expecting in this title. Apparently the ghosts are some sort of eldritch force sent to bring about the universal apocalypse. Elma even quotes scripture.
Al, you're going straight to medical.
I'm healthy as a horse, sir.
That's what worries me.
Come on, back me up here.
Stop moaning.
I like the implied relationship between Elma and Al, perhaps even a romantic tension. We learned that Al was on her team back when they were on Earth, but due to his piloting skills, he was quickly promoted. We also learned that Al had a sister the same age as Lynn. Apparently his sister fled their home country, and it's implied that she never escaped Earth. Someone finally asked where Al's been this whole time. After Al's checkup, he states that the Ares analysis will give them evidence of where he was, and that they wouldn't believe him if he told them. Suddenly, a large golden ship, more like a continent, appears from the void, and the Vita calls out to Mira. The voice from within the Vita says his name is Void. a primordial being who created the Vita and the Ganglion, which I don't even know anymore. Apparently this was the Great One that Luxor spoke of. Void announces that he will commence a contest of survival. He's taken part in this contest many times and has never lost. If the humans lose, they die, then he leaves. Everyone is frustrated as this means they have to keep fighting. Al says that they need to leave Mira before the growing voids destroy the planet. The key to leaving Mira is inside the cores, and the cores are with Void. We then get an explanation that reaches across every game in this franchise.
We're talking parallel dimensions.
This might be hard to wrap your heads around, but after the battle that ended with the White Whale crashing, me and the Ares were cast into a space between all those.
The navigational data from the Ares backs up the existence of the place he's talking about. What's more, our previous attempts to find the Lifehold core, and our studies of the floating landmass Volataris, which accompanied Void, have all led us to hypothesize such a possibility. The new data we got from the Ares has helped us tie this all together. It's led us to the truth of the matter.
When Void said that he brought worlds into concord, this is what he was hinting at then?
Based on these findings, we have concluded that the universe that Earth belonged to, and the universe that we're in now with Mira, are in fact completely separate.
Al explains that there are parallel universes all connected together. He says that Mira is outside Earth's universe, which is why things work differently here, like speech, the mims, and pretty much any other inconsistency the story has. Multiverses are so convenient for wrapping up larger plot holes with little effort. In order to escape to a different universe, one not being threatened by the ghosts, they need the energy contained in the cores. And that ends Act 1 of Chapter 13. Before I continue the grind, I start Al's affinity mission where a few things happen. Al tells us he wants to spar with Cross. The first important thing is that I finally get a speech option that fits my mood. I tell Al that if I beat him, he needs to give me the Ares. He points out that a Mim can't pilot the Ares, only a real body can, but I don't care. Boop. The second thing that happens is Al states I can't have the Ares until I have the heart and will to live on.
The will to live on through it all. The urge. What it is love.
This is so cheesy. Whatever, my skull is better anyway. After wrapping up the story section and level capping at 99, I finally get a bit of good news. I figured out a way to fight Farseis the Everqueen on foot. After this discovery, it only took a few tries to defeat her. That's the difference between a scale build and this build. I tried beating the Telethia and got pretty far before I realized a few important facts about this fight. There are 3 stages to the Telethia. The first stage has a 50% chance of either repelling ether damage or elemental damage. Due to my ether weapon, if he repels ether damage, I need to reset the fight. If I'm able to beat this first stage, the Telethia drops down to the floor below. In the second phase, the Tyrant has a spike effect that absolutely destroys me. If that wasn't bad enough, in the third phase, the damn thing flies away, forcing me to fight its hardest phase in my scale. I knew what I needed to do. I noticed that there was a delay in the second stage before it flew off. That was my window. If I could do enough burst damage before it switched phases, enough to lower it to 0 health, I could defeat it before needing to jump into my scale. So I went to the drawing board. I rearranged my build for optimal burst damage, adding spike defense augments to keep me alive while I attack. After some preparation, here's the strategy I used. In the first stage, I needed Elemental Shield instead of Ether Shield and also needed to get the Telethia to half-life before it entered the second phase. Once in that phase, I have to lower its life to just before it's ready to jump to the third phase. Then I need to do enough burst damage to take it out before it flies away. After dozens of tries, I finally did it. I beat Telethia the Endbringer and finally completed the entire map of Mira. To be honest, nothing really happens in Act 2 of Chapter 13. The most important pieces are that Xenos, including the remaining Ganglion, after hearing Void's threats, are making pilgrimages to the giant gold ship. The commander of New Olay works out a plan with Al to build the Manon spaceship into a vessel that can escape Mira once we have the cores. We also get this beautifully drawn section where Al explains what the outer dimension is like.
Thinking about it now, and to get a little technical, it was a nexus of parallel universes. It was like the backstage of space, the border town of all universes. You might call it a rift between worlds. Light years beyond the realm of human science. But strangely, most of the Ares features kept functioning as normal. Sure, the sensor suite adapted for human tech kept throwing errors, but the main transceiver never stopped logging huge quantities of some kind of data. And you might think I dreamed all this up, but somehow I could understand what that data was. Not logically, intuitively. You ready? Well, what came flooding into me in the Ares was the consciousness of all living things across all universes.
We see Shulk and many other characters from the sequels confirming that this multi-dimensional connection is bringing all of the Xenoblade titles together into one storyline. Al reveals that Void was imprisoned in this outer dimension and Mira itself is being influenced by it as well. A lot of non-important stuff happens with Man-on Scientist before we get this scene where Al mentions that he met Lao in the outer dimension as well.
Scram now. You know the way, right?
Yep. You got the best guide around.
World I came from. It's a welcoming kind of place. Everyone's ready for your big return.
I sure hope so.
If you make it, pass a message to Lynn. Humans are disgusting. And stubborn, and treat others cruelly. But if she realized this, that means she's anything but. Tell her to live.
We get some insights into Void's motives, and they're almost as disappointing as Dixon's whole "I just want to fight" motivation from the first game. Vita, or Void, wants to know what death is. He's never experienced the fear of his life ending, so he seeks out someone who can oppose him. One last thing I need to bring up, because it does become relevant at the end, is Al constantly making this very stupid joke where he... Well, I'll let Al explain it.
Someone asks how it's poppin', you say...
Terrible, of course. Yourself?
Better than you, meaning terrific.
This awkward joke that makes no sense in English is actually a translation issue. In Japanese, this was a pun on the word sayaku, meaning worst, and saiko, meaning best.
Hey, how's it poppin'?
Terrible. How about you?
Better than you, in other words, terrific.
Unfortunately, the clever wordplay didn't translate at all, and the joke feels forced and distracting. We do more meaningless quests that are objectively there to pad out this new content. To be honest, I stopped taking notes after a while. The Man-on ship is completed, and the jump drive is online. All that's left is to get the cores from Void. And that ends Act 2. The final affinity quest for Al is available, and it pretty much sums up my feelings for this entire game. Okay, we're preparing to face off against an immortal god and a parasitic alien force bent on destroying the universe. So Al wants pizza. That's right. One of the last quests in this sci-fi epic is gathering pizza ingredients because the local diner ran out of supplies. And yes, that is stupid, but how it's handled is so charming that I couldn't help but smile. Despite the terrible balancing, the disjointed storytelling, the vague mechanics, and hit-or-miss character development, Xenoblade X is a fun game. After completing Al's Affinity Quest, we unlock the single best art in all of the game, Hercules Blow. Just for comparison, Blossom Dance was previously the strongest art and had a 700% attack scaling. Hercules Blow has a 2400% scaling. This thing is insane, and had I known I was going to unlock it, I would have waited to fight the Telethia. With all that, I jump into the final act of Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. All of the Xenos are gathering inside the Man-on ship, ready to take off once we have the cores. Blade prepares for an attack, and Elma gives a rousing speech.
I'm not originally a creature of Earth. I'm just a refugee. Someone who washed up there after losing my home. And yet, your Earth accepted me with all the compassion of a place your people rightly call their mother. That compassion, it lives on in the hearts of everyone here who owe their lives to Earth. It is the love that saved me. We all mourned the Earth. And once again, we'll have to say goodbye to Mira, our newfound home. To be frank, I had nearly given up. It felt like I was fated to wander forever, seeking one haven after another. But now, I've stopped with the what-ifs. With each new land I came to, my spirit, whatever you could call my soul, evolved into something new. Soul. Sounds grandiose, but that's exactly what lives in us and in every MIM. It's the will that compels us to exist. No matter how cruel and unforgiving the environment, that will gave you the strength to carry on, honed spirits, and perfected your souls.
We reached the floating gold continent, but there's no opposition. We fly in, but the new white well ends up crashing, or landing, not sure which, and Elma's team heads out to confront Void. Void appears and again explains that he wants to understand death. We also find out that Void is the prime intellect of Samar, essentially a supercomputer with an infinite database of knowledge. He has every piece of information in the multiverse and yet doesn't understand any of it, which is actually pretty clever. My first battle with Void wasn't hard, but I couldn't one-tap him since he kept absorbing TP. This is a smart way to increase the difficulty of battle. I wish this had been implemented earlier. Al and the Ares race to take back the cores, but Void takes hold of him, absorbing Al into himself. We are then warped away to an alternate dimension. This thing was massive and cool looking, but at this point, I'm tired and ready for the story to be over. So I walk past all these enemies because I'm a way higher level, and run across Lin and Tatsu. Lin says that the tower in the distance is the way to Void, and I can now fly there on my Skell. I'm not entirely sure, but it's implied that you can travel around and gather up your party members, which, sure, might be tempting if this game had any semblance of balance. But seeing as I haven't had to depend on party members since the mid-game, I fly straight up and confront Void with Elma and Lin. Void is powering up, getting ready to leave this dimension, but I, using the build I've honed over 120 hours, one-shot this guy into oblivion. The Ares Prime comes out of Void and Al is ejected and injured. He sets me into the Ares, which carries the minds of all sentient life. I see the people of Elma's homeworld and of Earth, seeing family members and lost ones. Then this happens.
Terrible. How about you? Sweet. Hit it!
So apparently I'm supposed to fight this guy's final phase in the Ares Prime, but seeing as this game is stupid, I get out and once again one-shot the boss on foot, just like the devs intended. Void dies, stating he's happy to finally taste defeat until Al reveals to him that you can only die once. Void has an existential crisis, fearing non-existence before fading away. The golden continent starts to fall apart and we escape in our Skells, the man on ship close behind. It's at this time that the ghosts decide to make their final attack on Mira. Elma commands everyone to defend the Manon craft while they get the cores ready.
Damn. I don't remember ever teaching him to do that.
Random? Yeah. We're moving the flagship. All hands, ready for jump. Call back all remaining troops.
Sir, attention. Flagship is moving into position for jump. All units, return to base. I repeat, flagship is moving into position for jump. All units, return to base.
You can still make it! Get back here!
Please come back!
But please do hurry!
Energy charge has been completed!
Initiate jump!
And that's the ending. A little bittersweet, to be honest. If Al had been the main character from the beginning, I think seeing his sister's ghost would have had an awesome payoff, but Cross is the player's perspective, not Al. Escaping the blast and being cool in a skell just isn't the kind of payoff I want in the conclusion of my Avatar's story. It's my single biggest criticism. The intrigue built from memory loss goes nowhere, and for the most part, Cross is just in the background the entire time. The new White Well warps away and humanity lives on in the Xenoverse. After beating the game, we can start from Chapter 12 with the Ares Prime and a new scale ability, and yeah, that's it. Xenoblade Chronicles X is a mess of a game. Almost all of the more complex mechanics in this title are left up to the player to learn. Thankfully, there are a host of creators online like Nell or Max Minato who do a much better job explaining the mechanics than Monolith Soft does. To be honest, they should be getting regular checks from Nintendo. Xenoblade X's story structure and the open world methodology clash with each other. It's irritating, but okay. And most important, the difficulty is incredibly imbalanced. But despite everything, playing a broken game like this can be fun. Mira is a vast wonder of an open world, and that achievement is still rare to this day. It took the devs a lot of restraint to give the player so much freedom, and all things considered, I think it worked. I might enjoy the story and characters of the first Xenoblade more, but gameplay-wise, Xenoblade X is far superior. Xenoblade Chronicles X launched to stellar critical acclaim, receiving an 87 Metacritic score, which was a notable 3-point increase from its Wii U original. Critics agreed that Xenoblade X was Monolith Soft's most ambitious title, and I'd have to agree with that sentiment. It was noted in almost every review how the additional features and fixes enhanced the game to truly be its definitive edition. There is now no reason to play the Wii U original, unless you enjoy the older artwork or really want a bus slider. As of recording, the definitive edition is slated to sell around 1.5 to 2 million units, which is phenomenal and well deserved. Now that every single Xenoblade title is on the Switch, let's jump back in time and look at the system's first release and most popular entry in the series, the direct sequel to Xenoblade, Xenoblade Chronicles 2.